What up? Welcome back. It is Bones, and today let's go ahead and do a topic video. Now, I do these every once in a while when there's something I want to talk about in the toy industry and toy community. And we do have some news that has come out recently on a lot of topics, but today we'll specifically take a look at Hasbro licensing out some IPs to McFarlane. Now, we do know that this is going to be specifically for the Page Punchers line, and it is also going to be a 3-inch scale little figures. Now, there has been a lot of takes on this and mostly speculation. Now, coinciding with this, Hasbro is laying off more than 1,000 workers. Not all at once, but within the recent months, they're going to be losing all those people from their payroll. Now, a lot of these are going to be in their actual toy divisions throughout the company. And this has, gotten a lot of people to conclude that this is mostly because that the toy industry is dying and sales are down. It hasn't been anything like the glory days of Hasbro. And in fact, their sales have been tanking for a couple of years already. And people like to say that this is pretty much throughout the toy industry, but I beg to differ because this is not necessarily the whole toy community, because you still have Fisher Price, Toy Vehicles, Mattel. A lot of companies are still having very good sales, and especially McFarlane Toys is doing really well. Now, we do know that it is not necessarily the same for Hasbro because they do have shareholders. They are a big corporation, and for them the bottom line is the dollar, and they have to make their profits, and they have to figure out ways to stop the bleeding from their, pretty much, I would say, losing touch with consumers and definitely not having the sales that they used to have. Now, McFarlane, on the other hand, I think in a recent interview, he did say that he has more money than he knows what to do with, so it's not about money. He also said that right now he is expanding and hiring for the different divisions of his toy company and also other products, which is statue making and digital figures, which is a whole nother thing that McFarlane is getting into. But he is expanding in different branches and at the same time growing his number of IPs and properties from other companies. Now, this is actually proven by acquiring these IPs from Hasbro, and that is Transformers, G.I. Joe, Power Rangers, Dungeons and Dragons. And this is, just the beginning. This is an agreement between the two companies that McFarlane will produce the figures and Hasbro will get money from that with, not lifting a finger. So basically, they are, using McFarlane to make a little bit of extra revenue. And I have heard people say that, oh, Hasbro and McFarlane are joining forces because the toy industry is going down. But this is not necessarily true. This is actually Hasbro leaning a little bit on McFarlane to get some relief for their incoming profits while giving McFarlane a chance to expand even more. And you have, the interwebs blowing up of what this actually means between Hasbro and McFarlane. I have seen comments from both sides. You have a lot of diehard Legends fans saying, keep your unarticulated statues away from our Legends, which is moronic. And then you have the other side of people saying, keep your non-detailed reuse gummy plastic baby toys away from our DC multiverse. So, one thing that we do know is that Marvel isn't actually owned by Hasbro. Marvel is actually owned by Disney. So, take it down a notch. McFarlane isn't going to be making Marvel Legends. Besides, what would have to happen first would be that McFarlane would have some sort of communication or business dealings with Disney. And of course, we know that's not happening. So if there was any way that McFarlane could be making connections behind the scenes with Disney and, inching his way in between Hasbro and Disney, then we would pretty much know it by now. I mean, I haven't seen anything that would think that McFarlane has worked with Disney. But if that were true, then you might have something to worry about. But I still think that McFarlane wouldn't necessarily have his eye on making 6-inch Legends figures. I think McFarlane is pretty set on making 7-inch figures the norm. So anything that he would do would probably be more leaning towards 7-inch figures. But as we said before, these page punchers are the tiny little 3-inch figures. And that brings up another point that a lot of people haven't pointed out. And this is something that I have noticed. And that is that the 3-inch page punchers are actually all scaled down versions of 7-inch figures. Now, we have seen this already, like with the Green Lantern, but another thing that I saw was that we do know that we will be getting the mutant leader from the Dark Knight Returns because he has been shown in a 2-pack of page punchers with the Batman. And this is just a big clue that in the future we will be seeing a 7-inch scaled mutant leader. So it is not out of the realm of possibility that these scaled down versions of characters, like for G.I. Joe and Transformers, will be actually scaled up into a larger size. I would have to think it just has to do with how these sell. If these do well, then maybe McFarlane could convince Hasbro to allow him to go into the next stage and make these larger scale figures. And this would probably pertain to all the IPs that are licensed to McFarlane. So you could see a small 3-inch Power Ranger get scaled up into a highly detailed, still articulated 7-inch Power Ranger. But that's, just speculation. We do not exactly know how this will play out. Me, for one, I do not really collect anything smaller than 6-inch. In fact, I'm right now mainly a 7-inch collector, but I may end up buying some of these just, to support and see what happens in the future. Now, it would be really interesting to see McFarlane's take on Dungeons and Dragons because we do know he has, that affinity towards dragons and medieval stuff. And we do know that Hasbro did do a kind of bad job with the Dungeons and Dragons, so we'll see how that works out. And we know that a big major factor of this is actually the low sales of Hasbro products. Their sales have been absolutely abysmal. But McFarlane, not so much. McFarlane has actually been doing really well. We can actually look at this from a couple of years ago when he was awarded the best selling action figure line in the toy industry. Now, at that time, a lot of people were, asking, how is this possible? I don't think McFarlane sells that many figures. And they tried to deny it as much as they could. But now we do know that that company had nothing to do with McFarlane. They gave that award out year after year, and it is based on sales and amount of units sold. So I know people don't want to hear this, but McFarlane was the best selling action figure line, and he continues to have great sales. And this is just proven by how many IPs he is currently doing. I mean, I don't know them all, but you have Doom, you have Warhammer, you have Mortal Kombat, which he is continuing. And with this acquisition of the IPs from Hasbro, it is just proving the point even more that McFarlane is doing rather well with his toy line. Now, if you still think I'm lying or making stuff up, all you have to do is look at the recent Ollie's and Ross, and I think Burlington was another place where people were finding toys. Now, what does this have to do with the sales of Hasbro? Well, what this has to do is I have actually done my homework and I saw a lot of hunt videos, a lot of stuff online. And the major thing that stuck out to me was that although you can say that there is also some McFarlane figures in these places, they're very small. And another thing is they're mostly figures that are like 2 years old that nobody wants. They're characters that, in all honesty, were like the crappiest McFarlane figures. And even though there is still a minimal amount that you actually see in the toy hunts and, online, I think even some Spawn figures were found there. But that does not compare, and understand this, that does not compare to the hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of Marvel Legends, of G.I. Joe Classified, of Star Wars, and I'm not even talking crappy figures. I'm talking gems that collectors actually want. And that's why you could see the big discrepancy between how many and the assortment of Hasbro product is being found in these stores, in these discount outlets, and McFarlane is a minuscule amount of the product. And that is where you can actually see the truth of how the sales in the recent years have been for Hasbro, when a large part of their product in bulk has actually been moved to these discount stores. I mean, people were even finding awesome things like Thor's hammer and and helmets and stuff at Ross or at Ollie's, and I'm pretty sure you're not going to find a McFarlane Batwing at Ollie's anytime soon. Now, if you think that McFarlane isn't, eyeing a spot, trying to get some sort of way where he can make some Marvel characters in 7-inch form, then you are just lying to yourself. Because if you know the history of McFarlane, he really is a big innovator. And as much as people hate him, and I'm not the biggest McFarlane fan, I'm just telling you the facts the way I'm seeing them right now. And basically, if any other company had the DC line, I would be collecting whatever line that would be right now. But it just so happens that right now McFarlane has the DC line, and I have always and forever will be a DC action figure collector. But if you think that he is not eyeing that prize, then you are sadly mistaken, because he is definitely open to making money and expanding his company. And in the end, that is what it is all about. It is about the profit line for these companies. If they see something good, as much as you'll hate it or I'll hate it, that is what they are going to go with. So, like I said, in the end, money talks. Never say never in the action figure game. But you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.